Now available in paperback and e-readers, eSteam Cancel Vacation. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a social justice, social media mob looking to cancel her in this all-new eSteam series adventure. Get eSteam Cancel Vacation in paperback and e-readers today. Last week, Candice Owens got her ninja wake-up call as she was terminated from her position at the Daily Wire. Now, Candice Owens is one of these black female conservative pundits, and as one of these black female conservative pundits, she oftentimes talked on talking points that were detrimental to black people at the Daily Wire. Now, as Candice Owens became a popular person on that platform of the Daily Wire, she thought that she had the autonomy to be able to say whatever she pleased because, according to the Daily Wire, their mission is supposedly free speech. However, Candice Owens soon got a hard lesson about the free speech not being free on these far-right and far-left media platforms when she decided to go against the narrative of the owner, Ben Shapiro. Now, Ben Shapiro is a Jewish man, and as a Jewish man, he has a strong support for Israel. And when he started to hear Candice Owens start to make statements critical of Israel as related to the Israel-Hamas conflict that started after the attacks on October 7th, this is where Ben Shapiro stopped being about free speech and wanted to do something about the expression of free speech that Candice Owens was participating in when she decided to start making statements saying that she was in support of the Palestinians. And as she was in support of Palestine, she was seeing the campaign against Hamas as a genocide and making these kinds of statements that she was making. She basically was making statements that he believed, as the owner of the Daily Wire, believed to be anti-Semitic, and as a result, he decided to terminate the employment of Candice Owens. Now, what happened to Candice Owens is something that I'm not really too sympathetic to her about, and I'm not sympathetic to her at all because Candice Owens is one of these black female bootlicks, and this black female bootlick has gone out of her way to make a lot of anti-black statements as she's been a political pundit over the last 2 years. And as she's been a pundit on these media platforms, she has made a lot of very just condemning statements towards black people. So what's happening to Candice Owens is she's just reaping what she sowed, later than what she sowed, and greater than what she sowed. And as she reaped what she sowed, later than what she sowed, and greater than what she sowed, what's happening is that Candice Owens' termination is proving a point that Professor Black Truth made many years ago, in that bootlick is a job without a retirement plan. And when it comes to white supremacy, they always break their toys, because when it comes to white supremacy, they were just toying with Candice Owens because she was not a person they valued as an employee. No, they never valued Candice Owens at all because her only job as related to the Daily Wire was to be a token for them. Because when it comes to platforms like the Daily Wire, this far-right media platform, they only saw Candice Owens as a token, similar to what The Blaze sees Eric July as, somebody who's there passively to represent diversity and inclusion, but aggressively is there to be their mouthpiece to make the statement that this media platform is not racist. And as that mouthpiece, what their job is to do is parrot out the talking points of their media owners like Ben Shapiro, and parrot those talking points without any sort of pushback at all. Now, Candice Owens got it all twisted when she thought that this media platform was about free speech, but as somebody who has been in entertainment and publishing for over 25 years, I can tell you the only viewpoint that you're allowed to have when you work at these types of platforms is that of the publisher or the owner. That's the only talking points you can have on those platforms, because there is no real concept of free speech when you work for a private company. No, the only talking points you're allowed to have on these media platforms are the ones that you are told to say. And when Candice Owens thought that she had been given this autonomy to be able to say whatever she pleased, she basically thought so highly of herself that she thought she had the ability to go off of the script. And when she decided to go off the script, that's when the owners of the company, like Ben Shapiro, started to have a problem with her. And they started to have a problem with Candice Owens because as she decided to go off the script, that's when they wanted to really deal with her, because she was hurting their money, because these media platforms, they make their money primarily from from people out here supporting them, like many of these corporations under the table, and many of the viewers who give in donations. And when they started to hear Candice Owens going off the script, that's when they decided to deal with her, because as she went off code, all of those white supremacists at the Daily Wire decided to get on code. And as they got on code, what they did was follow the unwritten and written social rules regarding black bootlicks. Because again, like Professor Black Truth has said, bootlick is a job without a retirement plan, because the bootlick's job is only temporary, and the bootlick, again, is only there to tell people that they and the world that they're not racist, and cover up their racism by having this guy basically be there to tell people he's the black guy or she's the black girl, and because they've got a job, they're not racist, and as they're there, they can say a few things. Unfortunately, that kind of power went to Candice Owens' head, similar to the way on the left it went to the head of Letitia James here in New York, and went to the head of Fannie Willis. These bootlicks basically thought because they were given a little autonomy by their white supremacist paymasters that they had actual power to do whatever they pleased. And that's not the case at all. And that's the reason why the Ben Shapiro went out here and decided to terminate Candice Owens' employment at the Daily Wire. They decided to terminate her employment because she had just gotten too big for her skid mark jockey draws. And as she had gotten too big for her skid mark jockey draws, they basically decided, hey, we gotta check this female because she's acting like she's running this spot. And when it comes to white supremacy, the one thing they don't like is an uppity black person who thinks that they have the power and freedom like a white person. And that's basically where we start to see the hypocrisy of Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, because Ben Shapiro over at the Daily Wire, he talks about how his platform is for free speech, but we see that when it comes to free speech, when he talks about free speech, he means only people who are white and possibly of a certain religion having the ability to have free speech, not a black person having the right to have free speech. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in, because when it comes to him, he can have the free speech to be able to articulate anti-black talking points like George Floyd dying of an overdose, even though the medical examiner's report says that he died of a homicide from Derek Chauvin putting his knee on his neck, making statements like the black-white wealth gap isn't due to race, and going out here and saying that black people have equal wealth, even though we have been oppressed in this country for over 400 years, and haven't been able to compete even after the days of the Emancipation Proclamation due to white supremacist terrorism from the Ku Klux Klan and discrimination in left-leaning areas. I mean, he wants to make that statement and say there's things like that, and then say, oh, he's defending Confederate statues. Now, I have said that they need to be there because of the Constitution, because we need to know this as related to history. We don't want history erased, because what these racists will do is say, oh, we're not racist, and then then say the history was different and that slavery was just a choice or some stupid nonsense like that, but the statue will show us that this wasn't the case. And we've got guys like Ben Shapiro also going on and saying things like there's no systemic police racism, even though the police came out of the powder rollers during slavery in order to catch slaves. I mean, he's making all of these statements and saying things that are clearly racist against black people. But the minute Candice Owens starts making criticism of Israel, and he starts to feel like it's something that offends the politics of his religion, that's when we start to see the hypocrisy of Ben Shapiro as related to the whole concept of free speech. I mean, it seems like he only wants free speech as long as you're saying what he wants to say, no different than a junior high school kid who only wants you to be cool with them as long as you're doing whatever they tell you. And that's the whole thing that makes being around these people who are bootlicks for these, as Professor Black Truth calls them, right wingnuts, extremely dangerous. Because when it comes to these people, again, they'll do anything to be a part of these white social circles and give a pass to anti-black racism. And that's what Candice Owens did over the course of her time at the Daily Wire. She gave a lot of passes to those racist as related to black people, but the minute that she thought that she had the autonomy and the power to say whatever she wanted, that's when those same white supremacists decided to censor her, the same way that they try to censor black people on these media platforms. Because on these media platforms, black people don't really have free speech. I mean, we see this with YouTube and the way that they're constantly monitoring black channels. I mean, we had one of these right wing nuts basically decapitate his own father and put the video up here, and that video was up here for several hours. Meanwhile, if a black person talks about black love or black empowerment talking points, that video is quickly taken down off of YouTube because they don't like the politics of black people talking about taking their power, and they don't like black people going out here and expressing themselves. That's what they really don't want on all of these media platforms, whether it be the left or the right. No, what they want you to see is this black bootlick like a Candice Owens parroting their talking points, and again, they're only allowed on the platform in order to, again, I repeat it, passively talk about how they are diverse and inclusive, but the only reason why that person is there is because they are a black face to continue parroting these anti-black talking points on these white media platforms. And that's the hard lesson that Candice Owens has sadly not learned as related to this whole situation. She hasn't really learned anything as related to this, because with people like Candice Owens, they live to bootlick, and because they live to bootlick, this whole lesson is something that she sadly will not learn, and she'll think that she can go out here and continue to be a bootlick and still think that she can go out here and get some crumbs from one of these other far-right tables. Now, the whole irony, again, of this whole situation is these people like Ben Shapiro love to talk about how they're against cancel culture. Well, what are you doing to Candice Owens right now? Critical question I gotta ask Ben Shapiro. Looks like you're canceling Candice Owens and showing me the hypocrisy of the far right, just like the hypocrisy of the far left when it comes to these media platforms. When it comes to black people, the far right and the far left can agree on one thing, and that is both sides are anti-black. And what's happening to Candice Owens is no different than what happened to Don Lemon as related to his possible show on X. When it became time to put the show on the air, Elon Musk decided he didn't want to have Don Lemon on his X platform, which is a right-wing platform coming from the far left. And that's what Candice Owens thought she could do. She thought she could just go find a platform to be on and be able to say whatever she wanted. But that's not something that they wanted, because again, they don't really want free speech, and that's where us a new black media, we understand this altogether. When it comes to these platforms, they don't really want black people having free speech, and that's why they're constantly monitoring us on social media. They don't like the fact that if black people go out here and start talking, that we start countering their talking points with actual facts. I mean, Candice Owens is not a part of anything because she's a bootlick, but when we talk about the new black media, we are the ones they don't really want to hear from, because as we start talking about things like reparations, as we start talking about getting tangibles from the government, as we start talking about elevating our image like I do on SJS Direct, and putting positive images of ourselves out there, that's when both the right and the left start having issues with black people talking, because once we start talking about empowering ourselves, what we are doing is severing our ties from the codependent far right and far left, because neither side was ever about black empowerment. No, neither side is about empowering black people, and that's the message, that's the thing that flies over the head of a Candice Owens. It flies over her head because she only came to that Daily Wire platform not to go out here and express free speech. No, she came to that place because what she wanted to do was just basically be their paid mouthpiece, their paid shill. And what happened with Candice Owens is she didn't understand that as part of the covert contract that she signed in order to get clout with those whites on the right, was that if you go and sign that contract with them, you are expected to go out here and say what they want said. You have no free speech, you have no autonomy, and if you even think about stepping out of line, they will basically rescind their deal and kick you off their platform. Now, they already planned on kicking her off their platform because, again, bootlick is a job without a retirement plan. And once the bootlick has basically fulfilled their standard as related to meeting the diversity quota, they want to get back to business as usual, and they don't want this black person knowing too much. So there is no permanent job for a bootlick on these platforms, and that's what Candice Owens, like many others, just don't understand. And what happens with many of these black female bootlicks, like her, Letitia James, and Fannie Willis, is that what happens is they get their head gassed up because the white men that they deify and worship basically make them feel good. And as they're made to feel good, what happens is they get caught up in their power, and they start thinking, oh, I have autonomy to say whatever they please or do whatever they please, not understanding all you're doing is creating a mountain of evidence that will be used against you to be justified to terminate you from your position and make it where you'll basically be out here on the road to being unemployable, like Ascot boy Roland Martin, because that's basically where Candice Owens is headed at this point. And she's headed down the road to being like Roland Martin on YouTube, struggling to have a channel, because now that they no longer need the tool, and the tool won't be weaponized because she's lost all credibility, she will fade into obscurity like Roland Martin, because they no longer need her to fit their diversity quota. They no longer need her to be that say that, oh, you're the black person who represents us. This basically is things that they do to these black bootlicks, and what we see here is just another black bootlick getting her ninja moment. And as she gets her ninja moment, she will basically be tossed off, is being tossed to the side. And sadly, many of the other black bootlicks will not really learn anything because they are too opportunistic to see that this is the final fate for them. They're thinking they're going to get in Candice Owens' spot, not understanding there was never a spot for you in the system of white supremacy. No, they just have you there for a moment to be a token, and then as they're looking to play their game of chess, they see you as a pawn they can take off the board easily, and you're just fodder in their ongoing campaign of anti-black racism. And the whole thing is that we in the new black media have no sympathy for Candice Owens, because all Candice Owens is getting as related to her situation at this platform of Ben Shapiro is a bootlick's reward, and a bootlick's reward basically shows us all the hypocrisy of the right and the left as related to their whole talking points about free speech, as related to this whole concept of their platforms being places where people can have actual freedom of expression as presented under the First Amendment. Now, if you want to pick up my book that makes a commentary on cancel culture, Esteem Cancelification, you can find that book in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com. And in that book, I make a commentary on cancel culture as related to demons and talk about how these demons look to silence anyone out here who wants to be able to go and express themselves freely. And I also talk about these points also in my novel, Spellbound. You can find both of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find both these books at other online booksellers like Drafted Digital or Google Play, and Barnes & Noble, and Walmart and Target. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.